developing story. Thousands of people attended a vigil in Minneapolis overnight in memory of the 37-year-old woman, a U.S. citizen, who was shot and killed by a federal immigration agent in front of a crowd of protesters yesterday.
Federal officials say it was self-defense, but the mayor described it as reckless and unnecessary. The killing has sparked protests around the country now, including in the Philadelphia area.
Action News reporter Catherine Scott is tracking the story from the Satellite Center, joining us live with video of the shooting and more on the woman who was killed. Catherine?
That's right. State and local officials are demanding that ICE agents leave Minnesota, but the Department of Homeland Security Secretary says they're not going anywhere. We want to warn you that the video you're about to see is disturbing, but we're showing it to you so you can make your own determination amid this national dispute of who was in the wrong. That is the video from yesterday morning in Minneapolis that has sparked outrage and protests amid the Trump administration's latest immigration crackdown. An Immigrations and Customs Enforcement agent fatally shot 37-year-old Renee Good, a U.S. citizen and mother of 3. A spokesperson for the Department of Homeland Security claims Good was trying to run over law enforcement officers when she was shot, an account disputed by Minnesota Governor Tim Walz and Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey.
We've dreaded this moment since the early stages of this ICE presence in Minneapolis. They're ripping families apart, they're sowing chaos on our streets, and in this case, quite literally killing people.
The Department of Homeland Security announced they were sending at least 2,000 agents to Minnesota this week to begin what they called their largest immigration operation to date. Good's ex-husband said Good came across the group of ICE agents after she and her partner dropped her son at school. There are multiple clips of the shooting circulating, but in this one you see her SUV backing up. The ICE agents approach, trying to open the door. When the wheels start turning to the right, an officer in front of the vehicle pulls a gun and the shooting begins. The officer moving to the side of the vehicle and the shooting continues. There's another clip from a higher angle that indicates the turning car made contact with the agent. Homeland Security said agents acted in self-defense and that this was an act of domestic terrorism.
ICE agents repeatedly ordered her to get out of the car and to stop obstructing law enforcement, but she refused to obey their commands. She then proceeded to weaponize her vehicle.
All right, all praise to our Heavenly Father, the Most High Yah, the great I am that I am, in the name of our Lord and Savior. Some of y'all call him Yahushua, some of y'all call him Yahushua, some of y'all call him Jesus. All right, so as you can see from the clip, you know, the recent events, the tragic events of what happened in Minnesota, right? And, you know, the funny part about this is I was going to do this Bible study, you know, about, you know, what's going on in Minnesota with the scam, the welfare scam, you know, and how that relates with Israel, right? And then Trump went down here. I was going to do this video last week, but then Trump went, you know, down here, yanked up Maduro and all that. So I had to shelve this, you know, this particular video. Then, you know, later on, then this when all of this stuff popped up, you know. And so what you can see in this is, you know what I mean? There's an ICE agent who shoots an American citizen, right? Now, the first thing you're thinking, you know, my mind is like, ICE agents way up in Minnesota? You mean to tell me a bunch of poor Mexicans and people from, you know, Venezuela or whatever they were coming from, a bunch of people have migrated from the southern border all the way up there to Minnesota, right? But what you find out is, you know what I'm saying, when you connect it with the welfare fraud, is that, you know what I mean, the ICE agents are there for Somalian citizens. Somalia, yes, as in East Africa, right? So now, you know, they got, you know, these, so now you're like, well, what, wait a minute. How do people get clear across the freaking Atlantic Ocean to get over here? You see what I'm saying? And set up communities and all these type of things in this country, right? So this is where, you know what I mean, all of you start tugging on one thread and then the whole blanket starts falling apart, right? But this woman lost her life. And this is why I always try to make sure that y'all understand geopolitics, right? Because what they are not telling you in the news, you know, they're making this a big debate about, you know, was the ICE agent in the wrong and with the American citizen? But if you look behind the curtain of why the ICE agents were there in the first place, you're going to see that Israel, United States, Somalia, all of that is tied into this, right? And that's what we're going to go through in this video. But as you can see, the federal agents, you wonder why their response is, oh, she was in the wrong. She shouldn't have did what she did. You know what I mean? You're going to even see in this next clip where J.D. Vance says this. And see, and this is what we've always been trying to tell people. You know what I'm saying? You know, white people in particular, you know what I'm saying? These government thugs, you know, that be on the streets, that they give badges to, they will shoot and kill you, you know what I'm saying, on sight. And then after that, the government comes in and you know, basically sides with them. So this is why we tell y'all, welcome to niggerdom, because this is what we've been trying to tell you when Colin Kaepernick took the knee, you know what I'm saying, back in 2017, right?
As the FBI now takes over this investigation into the shooting, the White House today gave its own account as to what happened.
And Tim Blotz is joining us now. Tim, it's an account that perhaps reinforces the divisions that we do have in our country right now.
Sure does. And it really underscores how we as a society can look at the same video clips, the same pieces of evidence, and yet still see different stories. Today, the White House press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, said that yesterday's shooting was the result of a sinister left-wing movement where federal law enforcement is under an organized attack. And then the vice president stepped to the podium, and he talked for the better part of a half an hour here this afternoon. But I think this particular thought really sums up best what he believes. Give it a listen.
But the simple fact is, what you see is what you get in this case. You have a woman who was trying to obstruct a legitimate law enforcement operation. Nobody debates that. You have a woman who aimed her car at a law enforcement officer and pressed on the accelerator. Nobody debates that. I can believe that her death is a tragedy while also recognizing that it's a tragedy of her own making and a tragedy of the far left who has marshaled an entire movement, a lunatic fringe against our law enforcement officers.
Now, the vice president believes that this is a tragedy by the making of that far left and that the driver, Renee Good, may have been a victim of left-wing ideology. Now, members of the White House press corps, they pushed back on that narrative. And then the vice president responded even more forcefully.
You just asked me a question that presumed that the reason why this woman died is because she was engaged in legitimate protest. She tried to run somebody over with her car, and the guy defended himself when that happened. Next question.
Well, the vice president then accused the press of misrepresenting this case, saying that the ICE agent is being treated as some sort of federal assassin, and those are his words here. But it shows how the White House has dug in on its own view of what happened here yesterday. Simone?
Yeah, people have different accounts and different perspectives.
Absolutely.
Yeah, as to what happened. Thank you, Tim.
As you can see, J.D. Vance, you know, vice president, you know, got heated when they kept pressing him about this issue. And there's a reason that he's getting heated, because all of this talk is going to bring attention to why are ICE agents in Minnesota, right? Now all this attention starts focusing, and if people keep focusing on this, and like I said, you start pulling that string, you're going to unravel this whole blanket and see what's really going on behind the scenes, right? Now, the bottom line is, whenever, you know, one of us gets shot, what is the first thing that everybody want to say? You were resisting arrest and whatever. And so in this instant, they're running to the same playbook. The so-called authoritarians are who always about law and order, but yet, you know what I'm saying? When it comes to law and order, you don't keep law and order yourself. Because if you respected international law, you went down there and just snatched up Maduro, you know what I mean? And then go down here and say you're going to take their oil, right? But you don't respect law and order. But yet you want to tell everybody else to respect law and order. And you've told American citizens that they don't have to respect law and order, particularly Black Americans, because y'all have taught us to rebel against authority. And then when we rebel against authority, guess y'all run to Romans 13, right? So let's go to Romans 13 and y'all see what I'm talking about. All right, Romans chapter 13, verses 1 through 9. And you do have to keep this, you know, in mind and understand. This is why you don't need to be running out here to these protests and all that type of stuff. But in this instant, you know, according to what the news reports are saying, the woman went there to drop her child off. OK, so I don't know the full extent or the details about that. So, you know what I mean? They try to make this a left versus right thing. And I'm going to show you why here in a minute. But anyway, Romans 13, verses 1 through 9. What does it say? Let every soul be subject unto the higher powers, for there is no power but of God. The powers that be are ordained of God. So even these thugs and all these people. But you see, the same way when Biden was president, the right didn't want to submit to authority. When Obama was president, the right didn't want to submit to authority. But when the Republicans get into presidency, the left don't want to submit, right? So, you know what I mean? All this stuff where everybody runs to Romans 13, you know what I mean? The evangelical Christians, Romans 13, well, y'all should have said that when you were going against Obama and against Biden, right? You don't be no hypocrite, right? So if every power be of God, you got to submit yourself to that power, okay? So the powers that be are ordained of God. Whosoever therefore resisteth the power, resisteth the ordinance of God. And they that resist shall receive to themselves damnation. So you see, when they told her to stop, she should have stopped, right? Because that's what we tell our people, because we know. You know what I'm saying? You try to leave, they will pop. Now, this is the first time that, you know what I'm saying, we've really seen something egregious happen to somebody, you know, that's white like this. You know what I'm saying? That's on national media. You know what I'm saying? But the bottom line is this is the same principles at work. And these are the same reason why when these cops shot, you know, be shooting black men, unarmed black men and killing them, it's like, listen, you did not have to exert that level of power. You could have been merciful. You could have shot, they could have shot out her tires. You know what I'm saying? But the bottom line is, no, this one cop decided he wanted to take her life, right? And now the system has to come and protect one of their own, which is one of these cops, or these ICE people who they have, you know, empowered to go out here and to kill people if they feel like it's necessary, right? So here's where it says, whosoever therefore resisted the power, resisted the ordinance of God, and they that resist shall receive to themselves damnation. For rulers are not a terror to good works, but to the evil. Wilt thou then not be afraid of the power? Do that which is good, and thou shalt have praise of the same. For he is the minister of God to thee for good. So we have to keep in mind that right now we are not under Israelite rule. We are under Gentile rule until the Most High sends back our Lord and Savior Yahweh Shah, Jesus, you know, to come back and then to establish the kingdom back to Israel, right? But for now, we're under their rule. So you got to understand how to operate in their system. Now, if they tell us to go against the word of God, then we got a problem, all right? But this is what it says, for he is the minister of God to thee for good. But if thou do that which is evil, be afraid, for he beareth not the sword in vain. For he is the minister of God, a revenger to execute wrath upon him that doeth evil. Wherefore you must needs be subject, not only for wrath, but also for conscience sake. So this is why we got to make sure we ain't out here just trying to protest and rebel and throw rocks and do all this type of stuff. And even if you go to these peaceful protests, you got to understand how they put agent provocateurs inside those peaceful protests and make them violent protests. They'll put government people in there. They'll put on masks. They'll have boots on. They'll give them rocks and bricks to throw, and then they'll throw them at businesses. That's how they start, you know what I mean, responding to what was happening when Martin Luther King and them was doing these peaceful protests in the 60s. See, so if you studied all of that, you would understand that the agent provocateurs, which are government agents, most time either FBI, CIA people, they'll embed them in that movement. And then the next thing you know, while you're having a peaceful protest, walking down the street marching, you got these people that are government, you know what I'm saying, agents that's picking up rocks, throwing them through buildings and trying to incite riots, right? And then the next thing you know, that gives the cops, you know what I mean, the people on the right, the authoritarians, to come marching in and put down your peaceful rebellion, right? So they will purposely turn it violent against you. So you have to understand these things before you go calling yourself taken to the street and trying to protest against these people, right? Verse 6. For this cause pay ye tribute also. So you pay your taxes, right? For they are God's ministers attending continually upon this very thing. Render therefore to all their dues, tribute to whom tribute is due. So remember, even Christ said, you know what I'm saying? Render unto Caesar the things that be of Caesar, right? And render to God the things that be of God, right? So the bottom line, as long as they ain't trying to tell you to go against God, just like when they tell you about this mark of the beast, you got to resist this, right? But until then, you know what I'm saying? They just tell you do certain things. Just comply. You know what I'm saying? That way, you know, just like we see in this instant, if the woman would have just complied, the man couldn't have pulled out his gun and shot her. You know what I'm saying? But he, you know, if he was ready to kill, he could have did that anyway. But still, that's beyond the point. But anyway, verse 7, render therefore to all their dues, tribute to whom tribute is due, custom to whom custom, fear to whom fear, honor to whom honor. Owe no man anything but to love one another. For he that loveth another hath fulfilled the law. So you see, if this thug would have had love for his neighbor, he wouldn't have been so quick to want to shoot the woman, right? He would have tried to step aside, at least shoot out the tires. That way, you know what I'm saying? They could have, apprehended her, you know what I mean, and took her in and book her, right? But no, instead, he took her life, right? But anyway, verse 9, for this, thou shalt not commit adultery, thou shalt not kill, right? He aimed the gun right at her and shot her because that's what they trained him to do, right? Thou shalt not steal. Well, somebody needs to tell Trump that, because you just think you can go down here, you want to talk law and order, but you go down here and take a country's president and bring him over here and say, oh, well, I'm prosecuting him for what he's doing. But then you're going to take your butt down there and claim somebody else's oil is yours when it's in their land and not yours, right? And then also it says, thou shalt not bear false witness, right? And so if you running around here lying on people and saying they're selling drugs when it wasn't, you know what I'm saying? Then you are the one who's basically need to repent. Thou shalt not covet. You sitting here wanting somebody else's oil, right? But you want to tell everybody about law and order, but yet here it is, you want to covet somebody else's oil in their country. So, you know, all of y'all thugs that want to act like, you know what I'm saying, y'all ain't got no sin on you. You got a lot of sin on you, right? So when you talk law and order to yourself first. Get the beam out your own eye, then you can see clearly to get it out your brothers, right? But anyway, and if there be any other commandment, if it briefly comprehended in this saying, namely, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. So you see, this is one of the two great commandments that we're supposed to keep. And you can see who loves their neighbor and who doesn't. Because these people, they claim to act like they're Christians, and the Christians claim like they're supporting people who love people. These people are murderers, thieves, and killers, right? That's who they are. That's why you see J.D. Vance got so heated, because this woman who was not armed, now all of a sudden they say she armed herself with a vehicle. But this is what they do. And this is what we have been saying in the Israelite community, because we ain't black, but we've been saying it for years. But when we were saying it, y'all couldn't hear. But maybe you can hear now that it's happened to one of your own. All right. So the next video that I'm going to show y'all, but just because I just want, before we leave this, I want to show y'all this front and forward, you know what I'm saying, video. Okay, that I'm going to show her in a minute, then I'm going to slow it down. But watch as this cop, right, when you see the video, watch as this cop, he's going to come towards this way as she's turning this way, right? And he's going to be the one that's going to fire the shot, okay? So in the video, I want y'all to watch, pay attention to as he comes around here to this way, and then he's going to come back this way. All right, so pay attention to this, because you're going to see, had he stayed his butt over here on this side, right? These other two came here. Had he stayed over on this side, the woman probably didn't even see him as she was turning the vehicle, right? So if he'd have kept his butt over on that side, the vehicle wouldn't have been aimed at him. But he moved himself in the front of the vehicle, right? So now let me show y'all this next video. All right, so did y'all catch it, right? I'm gonna show it to you one more time, but I'm gonna slow it down this time, okay? So watch the cop as he gets ready to get into the vehicle. You know what I'm saying? He turns around, and instead of him staying on the side of her as she turns into him, he goes around the front of the vehicle. That's why, you know what I mean? It looks like she tried to run him over. She may not even have saw that man, right? But anyway, let's go back and watch the video, and we're gonna slow it down, and then we're gonna move on.
About the Somali fraud in Minnesota, USA, I really think people need to start seeing the bigger picture here. Do you really believe that some Somali people living there in Minneapolis could get away with defrauding the state for, say, $9–10 billion a year? Of course not. Washington, D.C. is totally involved in this and not only allowed it to happen, but made it happen. So that's because Israel recently recognized Somaliland, part of Somalia, as an independent state. Why would Israel do so? Well, they need a place to deport the Palestinians to. But you don't just get a piece of land where you can deport 2 million people to. You have to pay for it. And that's what this is. The U.S. is the greatest ally of Israel. Remember, the United States citizens, middle-class people, taxpayers, are going to pay for that. This whole scam, the Somali care system scam, whatever, to me looks like an annual rental agreement where the U.S. taxpayer is now forced to pay $10 billion a year to the Somali elites, to Al-Shabaab, the terrorist organization, and so on, in exchange for a piece of land where Israel can then deport the Palestinians to. Your whole government is corrupt, okay? And this is just Somalia. Imagine what the USA is doing with India. Imagine how much money you're bleeding to India.
We had several other people in the country, even among the Jews, the Zionists particularly, who were against anything that was to be done if they couldn't have the whole of Palestine and everything handed to them on a silver plate so they wouldn't have to do anything. It couldn't be done. We had to take it in small doses. You can't move 5 or 6 million people out of a country and fill it up with 5 or 6 million more and expect both sets of them to be pleased.
All right. So now, the reason why I just showed y'all that clip, because this is what I was going to make the video about last week, right? I come across this guy, you know what I mean? He was talking, I come across him on X, and I'm like, what welfare scam? What is all that, right? And then I had been seeing videos, you know what I mean, about the Minnesota fraud scam. So I started looking into it, right? So this is the reason why the ICE agents are in Minnesota, right? So now you see, this is because you have to understand geopolitics. Why are the ICE agents there? Why are they there, you know, trying to get, you know what I'm saying, illegal aliens out of Minnesota? What is this going on, right? And now come to find out, they had been running a big scam with the welfare system, you know what I'm saying, with visas and everything, bringing people from Somalia over to the United States. I'm just going to let y'all see it for yourself. But let me show y'all Somalia so you'll get a understanding of what we're talking about. All right, so as y'all know, here's Israel right here, okay? And what you got that comes up through here is the Suez Canal, okay? So as you can see, if Israel's right here and you put military ships right here, you basically going to control what comes down through the Red Sea, okay, through here. Well, as you can see, Somaliland is right here, right? Somalia, really, this is all supposed to be one country. But now Israel recognized Somaliland as its own country, right? Why? Because you got the Houthis and all these people here fighting over in Yemen, okay? So now Israel, in order to fight the Yemenis, you know what I'm saying, and control the shipping that goes through the Red Sea, right, needs to control, as we can see, this area here. And if they can build military bases here, then you got control of what goes in here, what goes in here, right? So you see, it's a strategic move. So now, remember, they want to take this, so you got Palestinian people that, remember what Truman said, you got to take it by pieces. So if you're moving people out of here, out of Gaza, you got to have a place to put these people. So bring them here. But if you're doing that, what are you going to do with some of the Somalians, right? You take over that coast, some of these people have been going to the good old USA, right? Let's go back to the clips.
Israel's recognition of Somaliland sets off a chain of condemnation. But could condemnation escalate to confrontation? As military tension around the region heats up, what is the real strategy behind Israel recognizing a breakaway province in a Muslim country? And are the people of that province prepared for what could come? I'm Andrea Sankin. Today's newsmaker is the breakaway region of Somaliland. Well, after Israel announced it recognized the breakaway region of Somaliland as an independent state, people on the streets of Mogadishu protested in anger. while those in Hargeisa celebrated. But questions abound as to what conditions are really attached to that recognition. It was reported that the U.S. and Israel wanted Somaliland to accept thousands of forcibly displaced Palestinians. Plus, having Israel as an ally on the Red Sea could entail allowing it military installations to attack Yemen and Iran. Here's a look.
Jubilation in one city, but condemnation in almost every other. People in the streets of Hargeisa, the breakaway region of Somaliland's main city, applaud the decision Israel made just days earlier to be the first country in the world to recognize it as an independent nation.
I express my wholehearted appreciation to the State of Israel for its brave decision.
But that status isn't merely disputed, it's rejected wholesale. No other UN nation recognizes Somaliland's independence. It's very much seen as part of Somalian territory. Somalia's president shot back at Netanyahu and Israel.
Somalia asserts and states in a loud voice that northern regions, namely Somaliland, are part of Somali Republic.
On the streets of Mogadishu, Somalia's capital city, outpourings of public anger at Netanyahu's decision.
We gathered here in response to the offense committed by Israel against the sovereignty of our country.
Somaliland lays in Somalia's northwest arm, wedged between a coastline on the Gulf of Aden directly to its north, Djibouti to its northwest, and Ethiopia to its southwest. It was once known as British Somaliland, a protectorate that joined up with Italian Somaliland in 1960 to form the Somali Republic. The region unilaterally self-declared independence in 1991. That independence is unrecognized, but the breakaway region does have its own political institutions, currency, and a separate police force, and also enjoys a relatively higher degree of security and stability compared to the rest of Somalia, which is often affected by sectarian violence. Nevertheless, Somalia considers Somaliland part of its own sovereign territory, and until Israel's announcement, so does every other UN nation. The African Union, the Arab League, China, Turkey, and others rebuked Israel loudly. On the Somali president's visit to Turkey on Tuesday, President Erdogan hit out at Israel's actions, expressing support for Somalia.
Israel's decision to recognize of Somaliland was illegal and unacceptable.
We also extend our thanks to our partner countries, as well as regional and international institutions, for taking a firm stand against the violation committed by the State of Israel on 26 December this year.
All right. So as y'all can see, do you see now why the hypocrisy of Israel is ridiculous? You know what I'm saying? Because here it is, you don't want to divide, you know what I'm saying, this state of Israel between Palestine and Israel. You don't want to do that. Why? Because see, the Palestinians got that coast down there in Gaza, of which there's a lot of oil and gas off the coast there. So they want it, right? Not to mention, they'll be better strategically positioned on the coast of the Mediterranean, you know what I mean, to control, the Suez Canal between them and Egypt, right? But, you know what I mean, with Egypt, there's another part of that Red Sea that there's a canal that comes up there, and if they're talking about making a canal through there. So if they make that canal through there, they can bypass the Suez Canal, and they really can control the trade through there, right? So you see Turkey, China and all them understands that, y'all going to try to control the Red Sea. So you can see how the Most High is still drawing all these nations, right, until that area. And I mean, Russia got military bases in Djibouti, America, France, all of them, you know what I'm saying, got military bases down there. And Israel wants to put, a base right there, in the Mediterranean, but they want to put one down there where I showed you off the coast of Somaliland, so that they could be on the coast of the Red Sea, right? So they can control trade, you know what I mean? Because that's where they're over there bombing and rocking everything, because whoever controls that area basically controls trade, you see? So this is why I said, all of this stuff, as you can see. And here's the thing about these Hamites that they don't understand. Y'all should understand history, and that's Somaliland. But see, they come here and they give you money or whatever. If you let these people down here on your coast, right, you already know what's going to happen. They're going to take over the seashore first, the same way when they came over to America. Where did they come? Jamestown, all on the East Coast and all this type of stuff. They come to the coast because you got to come through water, right? You come through ships. Once they take over the coast, then they're going to start pushing the inhabitants further and further inland, right? Then they control trade. Now, all of a sudden, they got control of, disseminating, whatever comes in through trade, right? Through maritime, trading. So this is why you have to understand these Hamites, y'all sitting up here, and if you let these people in here, they're going to push all your people back into, inland. They're going to bring in, these Palestinians, put them down here. And what you think going to happen there, right? If you let these Palestinians come down here, then you're going to have the Palestinians and the Somaliland people. Then they're going to be at it because they're going to be funding the Palestinians, to join in this military. Oh, yeah, we moved y'all down here, whatever. And y'all going to naturally have a problem with those people who are the inhabitants of the land, right? And then they're either going to fund them to kill the Palestinians or they will fund the Palestinians to kill them, right? And then if you do that, guess what? You change the color of that region, right? You start changing the color of Somaliland and Africa being black, right, to looking more Arab. You see what I'm saying? So this is what the colonization has been doing between the Arabs and these Gentiles. They've been doing that stuff over there in that region the whole time. And this is why you can see this whole process ain't nothing but colonization, right? We just seeing it playing out, in our time, right? And this is what they're up to, but they don't tell, the American people that America is right smack dab in the middle of this, right? So let's go back to the clips. I got some more stuff to show y'all.
Analysts suggest that Israel might be enthusiastic to build strong ties with Somaliland for strategic reasons, like a future campaign against the Houthis in Yemen. Israel struck out militarily at the Iran-backed Houthis in Yemen several times in retaliation for Houthi strikes on Israel during the Gaza war. Somaliland's location just across the Gulf of Aden from Yemen could provide Israel with a well-located base of operations near a future conflict zone. There are also concerns that Israel may forcibly displace Palestinians to Somaliland in the future, based on news reports that emerged earlier in 2025, which the president of Somalia categorically rejected. But as Somaliland celebrates, with only the isolated voice of Israel backing it, concerns are growing that Israel's actions may fuel regional instability.
So you see, the thief comes to steal, to kill, and to destroy. And how do they do that? Divide and conquer. They find the weakest of your people, come in, give them gifts, lavish gifts like that. So they didn't put in a Somaliland leader, pat him on his head, say, oh, okay, well, let us come down here and we'll defend you. We'll basically fund. And that's why I say all of these funding, even if they was funding Somalis, not Somaliland people, but Somalis. If all of that money that was coming out of Minnesota was to fund the Somalis to go against the people in Somaliland, guess what they were doing? They were funding these people to attack them so that the Somaliland people would say, okay, they're these, you know what I'm saying? They're trying to make friends with you, but they're funding people to attack you. You see, they play both sides. So now, you know what I mean? What are you going to do if you're the Somaliland people? These people got guns and whatever, and somebody's giving them guns and giving them money, and they're coming and they're attacking us. You know what I'm saying? Now, okay, well, y'all want to keep attacking us. We're going to make a deal with Israel. Well, guess what? It was Israel and America that was funding the people to do that to you, right? They divide, they conquer. Now, once they get a foothold in there on that coast, they ain't never giving that coastline up, And they got plans in order for them to take control of the Mediterranean. We got to get these people out of Gaza because the whole world is talking about us, displacing people and doing ethnic cleansing, which they are doing, right? And you see why now, right? But they got to have somewhere to have those people to go. That's why I always show y'all the Harry Truman clip, right? But let's go back to the video.
Minnesota is now the center of one of the largest welfare fraud scandals in American history. What began as scattered red flags inside the state's food and social programs has exploded into a sweeping criminal investigation, exposing a coordinated Somali fraud ring that prosecutors say siphoned off potentially billions of taxpayer dollars. This was not petty theft or bookkeeping errors. Federal investigators allege that money intended for hungry children, vulnerable families, and individuals with disabilities was diverted into lavish lifestyles, shell companies, overseas transfers, and even terrorist financing routes tied to al-Shabaab in Somalia and Kenya. For years, these schemes operated under the radar, protected by weak oversight, political pressure, and a network of nonprofits that funneled fraudulent claims into federal programs with almost no scrutiny. And when the pandemic hit, the operation detonated. Emergency funding and loosened verification rules opened the floodgates, allowing fabricated meal counts, fake autism diagnoses, and fraudulent housing claims to move through the system in staggering volumes. U.S. taxpayer money did not just disappear, it was weaponized. Some of it appears to have flowed into the same regions known for hijackings, kidnappings, and terror activity in the Red Sea and East Africa. This scandal has now triggered indictments, whistleblower revolts, national security concerns, and political fallout reaching from Minneapolis to Washington. 78 defendants have been charged so far, but investigators say the full scope is still unknown.
All right. So now we go to the AI overview, and what do you see? Al-Shabaab most commonly refers to Harakat al-Shabaab, al-Mujahideen, an al-Qaeda-linked Islamist militant group based in Somalia. So wait a minute. You telling me that defrauded Minnesota welfare, you know what I'm saying, funds were being shipped over to an Islamic militant group based in Somalia, right? And you don't have all kinds of federal people who are being indicted and paraded before the public, like Maduro was, right? Come on. You see what I'm saying? Now, anyway, but it can also refer to various professional football groups in the Middle East. Al-Shabaab is a prominent and resilient Sunni Islamic political and paramilitary organization active primarily in Somalia, okay? So they say in Somalia, not Somaliland, right? But anyway, so you're funding people to overthrow their government, right? As well as Kenya, Ethiopia, and Uganda, okay? Goals: the group aims to overthrow the federal government of Somalia, expel foreign forces, and establish an Islamic state across the Horn of Africa under strict Sharia law. So wait a minute. You mean to tell me that the United States funds are going to this group, and again, y'all ain't got this all over the place. You know what I'm saying? Except maybe you're keeping it hid because this was your way of trying to overthrow the government of Somalia so you could get that coastline, right? And the fact that Somalia don't want to do it, they want to work with China and Russia, you start cutting deals with Somaliland. Let me show you. Just so y'all can see how current this is, right? The Times of Israel, 31st December 2025. Report: Somaliland president planning to make official visit to Israel in near future, right? Somaliland President Abdirahman Mohammed Abdullahi is reportedly planning to make an official visit to Israel in the near future following Jerusalem's recognition of the autonomous region. The Khan public broadcaster says that during his visit, Abdullahi will formally join the Abraham Accords, right, and sign a series of bilateral agreements with Israel, right? So you see, they don't care nothing about these people not accepting Christ. You know what I'm saying? They don't care nothing about, you know what I mean, the people having Jewish or Islamic beliefs, right? They work with whoever they want to work with, whoever will bow down and do what they want them to do. Abdullahi already made a secret visit to Israel in October, right? In the lead up to last week's announcement of mutual recognition. But now all this stuff has blown up, right?
During these periods, a network of nonprofits, cultural organizations, and community-based groups gradually embedded themselves into Minnesota's welfare pipeline. Many positioned themselves as service providers for food, childcare, disability support, and educational programs. Oversight was thin, audits were inconsistent or non-existent, and political reluctance to challenge certain groups or demographics created ideal conditions for abuse. Operators quickly realized that federal reimbursement programs could be manipulated with fabricated paperwork, inflated service numbers, and non-existent beneficiaries. This period laid the foundation for everything that came later. Fraudulent actors were mapping the vulnerabilities, understanding the loopholes, and identifying which federal programs could be exploited most effectively. By the time Feeding Our Future rose to prominence, the scammers already had nearly a decade of experience navigating weak controls and inconsistent enforcement. The pandemic did not create the fraud. It simply poured gasoline on a fire that had been quietly burning for years. The fraud uncovered in Minnesota did not stop with fabricated meal counts. As investigators followed the money, they discovered an entirely separate operation involving falsified autism diagnoses. A medical professional allegedly labeled Somali children as autistic in order to bill a federal autism assistance program. Parents were paid to falsely declare their children autistic so the clinics could secure higher reimbursements for services that were never provided. More than 15 autism centers were eventually investigated, with the first charges filed in September 2025. These clinics were not operating in isolation. Many were connected to the same networks involved in the food program fraud, revealing a coordinated effort to exploit multiple federal systems at once. The operators understood how to manipulate paperwork, inflate claims, and bypass scrutiny using the same tactics across different programs. Investigators later concluded that the autism scheme was not a side operation but a major financial pillar of the broader criminal network, functioning in parallel with the nutrition fraud scheme to extract millions from vulnerable federal programs. Alongside the autism investigations, federal authorities uncovered yet another layer of wrongdoing: visa fraud.
People in there illegally that never should have been in this country said they were somebody that they're not. They said they were married to somebody who was their brother or somebody else. Fraudulent visa applications, signed up for government programs, took hundreds of billions of dollars from the taxpayers, and we're going to remove them and we're going to get our money back.
According to ongoing inquiries and a recent investigation, approximately half of certain applicants, about 50%, were believed to have submitted fraudulent immigration claims. Immigration attorneys profited heavily from the process, and whistleblowers alleged that political protection from Governor Tim Walz's administration allowed the abuse to continue unchecked. This made visa manipulation a key component of the larger scheme, providing fraudulent actors with legal entry pathways and securing their presence within Minnesota's welfare system and a pathway to citizenship.
All right, so you see, again, I tell you, you can't make this stuff up, right? So you got 3 levels, you know what I'm saying, of fraud that was going on in Minnesota, right? The food program, right? Defrauding welfare out of billions of dollars, right? With the daggone medical billing programs, defrauding, you know what I'm saying, out of billions of dollars. And with these visas, allowing these people to even get over here in the first place. But you see how they work hand in hand. And then they got you out here voting. And now, you know, just like now that all this stuff then blew up, right? Because this American woman gets killed by these ICE agents who now, as you've seen Trump sitting at the table, oh, he's good cop, right? You know what I'm saying? Bad cop was the Democrats that let all them people over here. Now here comes Trump trying to come in here. Oh, well, we're going to get them out of the country and we're going to do this. But you ain't telling, you know what I'm saying, how this is really an illegal funding operation to launder money to get it sent over there to these rebels that you're using to overthrow Somalia, you know what I'm saying, so y'all can get a foothold over there off the coast of the Red Sea so you can control trade. So you're not going to explain all that to nobody. You ain't telling everybody that's what this really is, you see? But they'll have you go out here, oh, it's the Democrats that let all these foreigners into our country and whatever. Because, you know, them people from Somalia, they didn't walk across the ocean, right? You see? But they are bringing all these people in here because there's other geopolitical, you know what I mean, maneuvers that's being done here. And now y'all begin to see, you know, just how low down and despicable they are. And then they got people running out here, American people divided between, oh, the Democrats did this. Oh, Trump, he's coming and he's, you know, going to get all these people out of here because they're defrauding the money from us, whatever. And they both working together, right?
As prosecutors dug deeper, they discovered that the Feeding Our Future scandal was only one arm of a much larger web of corruption. Federal charges soon expanded into Minnesota's Medicaid Housing Stabilization Services program, where dozens of individuals were accused of billing the state for housing assistance and disability-related services that were never provided. Acting U.S. Attorney General Joseph Thompson described the scope of this housing fraud as astonishing, calling it an active crisis inside Minnesota's welfare infrastructure. This new branch of the investigation revealed that the same vulnerabilities exploited in the child nutrition program existed across multiple state and federal assistance programs and systems. These housing and welfare schemes followed a pattern nearly identical to the earlier operations. Operators created nonprofits for service organizations on paper, then used fabricated service logs, false documentation, and non-existent beneficiaries to drain taxpayer funds. Many of these new defendants were connected directly or indirectly to the same Somali community networks linked to the food scam, autism fraud, and visa manipulation cases. This overlap suggested coordinated knowledge of how to exploit the state's weak oversight mechanisms, rather than independent, coincidental acts of fraud. Federal authorities emphasized that the emergence of these additional fraud networks showed how deeply systemic the corruption had become. The schemes were not siloed. They were operating simultaneously inside housing programs, disability services, nutrition reimbursements, and medical assistance systems. Each program had its own vulnerabilities, and the perpetrators moved fluidly between them, extracting large sums with little resistance. By the time investigators connected all these networks, it was clear that Minnesota was facing one of the most extensive welfare fraud crises in the country.
So you see how crazy this is, right? The American citizens, can't get welfare, but yet you bringing people completely across the seas, and then you basically setting them up with billions of dollars. But the only reason y'all brought them over here was so that you could fraud the system and fund, these militant groups in other people's countries, right? Big scam. That's all these people do is lie. Let's go back to the clip.
The scale of the Minnesota fraud scheme soon attracted national attention. In November 2025, federal investigators, state officials, and whistleblowers briefed Congress on allegations that money stolen from Minnesota's welfare programs had been routed overseas to Kenya and Somalia, reaching al-Qaeda-linked terrorist groups like al-Shabaab. This revelation elevated the scandal from a state-level welfare abuse case to a national security concern. Members of Congress publicly demanded answers, well, at least the Republicans, warning that American tax dollars may have indirectly supported organizations involved in violence, kidnappings, and terror activities in East Africa. National political leaders responded with force. House Speaker Mike Johnson condemned the failures that allowed the fraud to grow, stating that millions in stolen welfare dollars had been funneled to an ISIS-aligned terror group because Democrats built a system so loose, so corrupt, and so politically timid that criminals could exploit it. President Donald Trump took an even more aggressive action, announcing the immediate termination of temporary protected status for Somalis in Minnesota. Trump declared Minnesota a hub of fraudulent money laundering and called for those responsible to be sent back to their countries of origin.
The Somalians should be out of here. They've destroyed our country.
These statements fueled widespread debate, with supporters arguing the fraud justified strong countermeasures and critics warning the rhetoric risked targeting innocent Somali American communities. Senator Mike Lee added to the national pressure, describing the scandal as a perfect storm of progressive governance, citing failed immigration vetting, massive welfare fraud, and taxpayer dollars reaching hostile actors. As deportation orders increased for Somali immigrants with temporary status, civil rights groups expressed concern that the federal response could harm families not involved in the crimes. Nevertheless, the fraud allegations and terrorism-linked claims continue to dominate national headlines, solidifying the scandal as one of the most politically explosive welfare fraud cases in recent U.S. history. As with most filings, federal prosecutors have charged 78 individuals across the various schemes tied to the Somali fraud networks in Minnesota, with 59 convictions secured so far. Authorities have recovered roughly $75 million, though investigators warn this is only a small portion of the true losses. Current estimates place the stolen amount between $1 and $3 billion from the food program alone, with additional losses from autism assistance fraud, housing fraud, and visa manipulation still being calculated. The investigation remains active and expensive. Federal agencies continue tracing money flows, reviewing overseas transfers, and pursuing leads suggesting portions of the stolen funds reached terrorist organizations abroad. Prosecutors expect more indictments as they obtain bank records, communications, and financial filings that could link additional individuals and nonprofits to the ongoing schemes. The fraud has now touched multiple federal programs, making this one of the most complex welfare investigations in American history. Within Minnesota, political pressure is intensifying. Governor Tim Walz faces mounting allegations from hundreds of DHS whistleblowers who claim he retaliated against employees who acknowledged the fraud, suppressed fraud reports, and allowed corrupt agency leaders to operate without oversight. Critics argue that under Walz's administration, Minnesota shifted from an $18 billion surplus to a $6 billion deficit due to unchecked welfare abuses, lax immigration controls, and political reluctance to confront fraud inside the Somali community. So far, no agency official has been held responsible, and whistleblowers insist the state's leadership enabled, ignored, or concealed the criminal activity.
All right, so y'all see. Billions of dollars, right? And you know what I mean? They use those Somali people to come over here so that they can money launder, you know what I mean? And channel that money over there to militant groups, right? Over there. And now Trump comes in and acting like he's this hero. And then they play it off in the media. Oh, he's being racist, you know, and all this type of stuff, right? When the truth of the matter is, he knows why that money was being, you know, money laundered. You know what I'm saying? How the Democrats was bringing all these people in here, right? So that the bottom line is they could, you know, hide, you know what I mean, set up all these programs, you know, whether it was housing, you know what I mean, medical, or, you know what I'm saying, food programs, so that they could channel the money to go into these militant, you know, foreign overseas groups, you know, who will basically create chaos in their countries so they can overthrow, so that they can eventually come in and take over their coastlines, right? So, you know what I mean? All of it works hand in hand. That's why I tell you, they both be working together. And most people don't even understand all this stuff. This is why you got to understand geopolitics, right? But now you can see. So then you'll be out here, running out here voting or protesting and don't even understand, you know, these people are all working together, right? So they defrauded the American taxpayer, you know what I'm saying? So they could, you know, funnel money over there to these militant groups that they're using to overthrow countries. Simple as that. It ain't nothing new, right? So let's go to this next clip so you can get a summary kind of all of everything that we're talking about in this video.
The Red Sea itself can be thought of as the primary maritime passageway between Asia and Europe, and the passageway is bounded by two narrow gates on either side of it that regulate access through it. The Bab el-Mandeb Strait in the south between Yemen and Djibouti, and the Suez Canal in the north that runs across Egypt. The route between these gates across the Red Sea is a part of the shortest possible geographic route for merchant ships to take traveling between Asia and Europe. And so it's the preferred route of choice for container ships carrying manufactured goods and raw materials from places like China, Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, and India to take when transporting their goods to the huge European consumer market. And from another perspective, this trade route is also a major artery for the flow of global energy resources from origin to consumer, like oil and gas from places like Russia, Kazakhstan, and Azerbaijan towards Asia in one direction, and oil and gas around the Persian Gulf towards Europe in another direction. As a result, roughly 12% of the entire world's trade volume usually flows through the Red Sea on an annual basis, which includes nearly a third of the entire world's container ship traffic, roughly 10% of the world's seaborne oil, and roughly 8% of all the world's LNG. An average of 50 merchant vessels usually transit through the Suez Canal on a daily basis, and this overall makes the Suez Canal and the Bab el-Mandeb Strait the second most critical maritime choke point for globalized trade anywhere in the world. To Russia, the Red Sea is still its most vital artery for for exporting their own crude oil and LNG resources by sea towards their new primary consumers, China and India, while Kazakhstan and Azerbaijan rely on the route to a lesser extent for their own oil exports as well. From China's perspective, the Red Sea is its most vital artery to receive energy resources from Russia through, and to transport their own manufactured products to the European consumer market through, which is of similar concern to Japan, and largely why both China and Japan maintain overseas military bases in Djibouti nearby to help safeguard their own trade routes. To Qatar, the Red Sea is its primary trade route to export their LNG supplies to Europe, while to Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Kuwait, and Iraq, the Red Sea is their primary trade route to export their crude oil to Europe through. To the European Union, the Red Sea is their primary trade route for receiving manufactured goods from Asia and energy resources from the Persian Gulf through. While to the United States, Washington wants to ensure the continuous flow of maritime trade through the Red Sea to keep the global economy and globalized system that it champions and protects humming along. And Egypt, as the controller of the Suez Canal that regulates all of this trade, stands to arguably benefit the most when the trade is running smoothly, and lose out the most when the trade isn't running smoothly.
I thought I'd give you a brief lesson in geopolitics. Why did Israel today become the first country to recognize Somaliland as a sovereign state? Here encircled in red is Somaliland. It's a part in northwestern Somalia. And the United Arab Emirates are funding construction of an Israeli military base in Somaliland, and the UAE also has a host of its own bases there. Why? Because they're fighting the Houthi rebels operating out of Yemen, who are backed by Iran, and Iran is likely being backed by China. And so the United States gets involved because this Gulf of Aden, as it's called, leads into the Red Sea, which leads into the Suez Canal, which leads into the Mediterranean, which crosses Gibraltar Strait into the Atlantic and reaches also the US. A lot of this trade out of India and China. Yes, we're trading with China while we're at war with them. All of that trade is very, very lucrative and very, very important to Israel, Britain, and the USA. And that is why you have so many Somalis living in Minnesota and Minneapolis. The reason is Trump and his owners have decided that they needed to trade something that they own, Minnesota, Minneapolis, for territory in Somalia, Somaliland, where they can build bases so they can fight the Houthi rebels and secure their international trade. This is a political trade, and this is how the world really works. Your owners, your governments, your bureaucrats don't care about you.
All right, so as y'all can see, right? No, the government doesn't care about you, right? And you can see there's more things going on to all of this, you know. There's war that's really going on, but, you know, you can't put your faith and your trust in man. You got to put your faith and trust in the Most High Yah, right? Psalm 91. He that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, he is my refuge and my fortress. My God, in him will I trust. Surely he shall deliver thee from the snare of the fowler and from the noisome pestilence. He shall cover thee with his feathers, and under his wings shalt thou trust. His truth shall be thy shield and buckler. Thou shalt not be afraid of the terror by night, nor for the arrow that flieth by day. So that's war, right? Nor for the pestilence that walketh in darkness, nor for the destruction that wasteth at noonday. So that's plagues, famine, right? 1,000 shall fall at thy side, and 10,000 at thy right hand, but it shall not come nigh thee. So we don't worry about, you know what I'm saying, all these other stuff. You put your faith and your trust in the Most High Yah. You wake up every day praying and talking to him, right? Verse 8, only with thine eyes shalt thou behold and see the reward of the wicked. So we're going to see these people fall to the left and to our right, right? Verse 9, because thou hast made the Lord, which is my refuge, even the Most High, thy habitation, there shall no evil befall thee, right? So you got to speak this, right? The Lord is my habitation, no evil shall befall me. You got to speak this, you know, so you'll have what you say. Neither shall any plague come nigh thy dwelling. So this is why you don't be afraid when they start telling you, oh, you got this plague out here or this plague out here, right? For he shall give his angels charge over thee to keep thee in all thy ways. They shall bear thee up in their hands, lest thou dash thy foot against a stone. Now remember, Satan tried to use this to make Jesus go out here and do something that the Most High didn't ordain him to do. right, to go jump off a building. And yet, you know, Yahushua, Jesus told him, it's written, thou shalt not tempt the Lord thy God. So you don't go out here doing dumb stuff, right? And then try to use this as a protection, right? But you use common sense. Verse 13, thou shalt tread upon the lion and adder, the young lion and the dragon shalt thou trample under feet, right? Because he has set his love upon me. Therefore will I deliver him. I will set him on high because he hath known my name. He shall call upon me, and I will answer him. I will be with him in trouble. I will deliver him and honor him. With long life will I satisfy him and show him my salvation. This is why you put your trust in the Most High Yah and you seek his face on a daily basis, right? So y'all see, in conclusion, this young lady lost her life because she was just going here driving her child to school. But because they got all this mess going on in Minnesota, right? You got these people that y'all done drug over here, right? So that you can channel money laundering, you know, schemes over here. Now you got ICE agents over there because Trump is trying to make it look like, oh, we're tough on crime because they done been busted for, you know what I'm saying, you know, having this illegal money going over there to these terrorist groups, right? Now, you know what I'm saying? This woman is out here, she gets killed, and now all of a sudden y'all want to make it look like, oh, she was wrong because she, you know what I mean, she was trying to flee and she tried to weaponize her vehicle and all this, when the truth of the matter is, you brought these poor people over here and weaponize these people so that you can just take money from the governments and from the taxpayers and send it over there to these other people that you're weaponizing to overthrow their governments so that you can get a foothold in there so you can control trade that's going through the Red Sea. So, you know what I'm saying? She lost her life due to geopolitics. This is why I tell you, you need to understand these things so that when you wake up, all it takes, you know what I'm saying, is you to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. The Most High has been keeping each and every one of us every single day. So it's about time for us to wake up and acknowledging him and asking him to guide our footsteps and lead our paths, right? Because we don't know the unforeseen dangers that we have in just trying to take your child and drop your child off to school, right? With that being said, thanks for watching. The Most High bless each and every one of y'all. We rock out here with my main man, K. Judah. Till we meet again, shalom.
Though I walk through the valley of death, shadows whisper, still in my breath. The ground feels cold, like it's alive. Each step a battle, just to survive. Though I walk alone through the dark, through the storm, but I'm not afraid. No, I'm not afraid. No, I'm not afraid. A light inside, it's my barricade. The trees, they shiver, they bend and creak. The wind, it howls, the future bleak. Yet my heart beats loud, a steady drum. It tells the night I won't succumb. They can't break me, no they won't, no they won't. My soul's on fire, they don't know. Though I walk alone through the dark, through the storm, but I'm not afraid. No, I'm not afraid. No, I'm not afraid. A light inside, it's my barricade. Fear is a shadow, it clings to the weed, but I got a voice and I let it speak.